where we're going or necessarily how it's gonna how it's okay.
Hi, we're the Book Mavens. I'm Rachel. This is Amanda. Welcome back. If you've been following along with us, we are now going to talk about books 10 and 11 in the Realm of the Elderlings series by Rob and Hobb. So this is starting the only quartet of the series, and we're covering the first two books. And we made a conscious decision to do this due to some vacation time that we had this summer, as well as the fact that books 1 and 2 really just kind of go together. They actually could have been just one book.
They have one long book, but
yeah. They really center around getting these dragons that have been kind of sitting in a mud pit for years in the Rain Wilds, moving them. And that's pretty much what these two books are. It's moving these dragons to a fabled city.
Right, so the humans agree to take them on this journey, and so you've got two kind of groups of misfits. You've got the dragons who can't fly as they're supposed to be able to, and then you have basically the Rain Wilds outcasts. So they are children who have been heavily touched by the Rain Wilds, and so they are outcast by society. They're not allowed to get married. They're not allowed to have children of their own because they don't want the deformities to continue. Thymara has claws instead of hands or fingers, for example. Basically, this whole book is just setting the stage, which on the one hand, I think is necessary because, you know, the Rain Wilds was this big mysterious place. We didn't know anything about the Rain Wilds. Thank you. We don't know anything about the Rain Wilds. And so, you know, this whole first book is really just place setting. And then in the second book, it just kind of picks up on that journey and takes us up to when they find Kelsingra, which is not a spoiler because in the end of the first book, the preview chapter is from the third book where they already are in the city and you're like, oh.
So if you've purchased the paperbacks, just be aware of that.
Yeah, there's spoilers right, left, and center, just all over the place.
So Thymara is a main character. There are several.
She's our main dragon keeper.
Yeah, it's a multi-perspective series, the quartet is. So it's different than what I would say the live ship, because the live ship does a multi-perspective in which there are multiple storylines happening, and then it comes together, but not until like the third book.
Right.
This, it comes together quite quickly.
Pretty quick. That's what so projection time.
Yeah.
I don't really see. I mean, I get it. We're probably going to explore the city. Some of the decisions made in these books are going to like bear their consequences. But like, unlike with the Farseer books where there are these like longer term political threads you can see that will be pulled, or like the Fool saving the world.
Insulated.
I don't really understand where we're going.
Well, there's no connection with the events of this book or these books with 6 of the books in the Realm of the Elderlings. It doesn't connect to Farseer. It doesn't connect with Tawny Man. It doesn't connect with any of them. And there are no characters, at least thus far in the first 2 books, from any of the other ones except from Live Ship. And even then it was just passing. It's very passing.
So, wait a minute. Let's just talk about our favorite parts of the book.
Okay.
Let me just say right out of the gate.
We're just tying these together because truly,
what I enjoyed the most in these books is actually the pre summary to the chapter. So in the past books, the little like pre-chapter excerpts were about like history or lore or lyrics from a song that kind of tell you some stuff. These are scribbled notes between the 2 homing pigeon keepers between Beantown and Treehog, and that's my favorite part.
Nothing to do with the plot.
I know it had nothing to do with the plot, but that's what actually I enjoyed the most was the dialogue between these 2 bird keepers, because that's the main source of communication, and it just reminded me so much of the way that telegraph operators worked. Like when it was the off hours, they were allowed to like talk to each other, and so they had it's like a pen pal. So I basically enjoyed these pen pals, and my favorite part was when one of the birds homed to the wrong city, and another bird keeper picked it up and sent them like a note, like scolding them.
To be used for personal
You're not supposed to be scribbling on these, because that's all they do. They write on the outside of the envelope. They're not like adding weight or anything to the birds. And you're like, you know, trying to slap the wrist, tell the rules, and he comes back and goes, "You want to talk about the rules? Okay, let's talk about how you're not keep taking care of your birds. Let's talk, you know." And they're like, whoa. I was just a friendly reminder. Like, I just loved it. That was my favorite part. Was the dialogue between the pen pals. The pen pals were my favorite part. Eric and Detozy, I think.
Yeah, and then turning into a little bit of a romance.
Maybe guys, maybe at the end, because one of them is planning to go visit the other.
No, they ended it.
No, they were going.
No, they're married.
No.
Yes, they are. Yeah, but they're writing it together. It's happening.
Wait.
They're getting married. And this was not my favorite part of the book, and she loved it, and she missed the big conclusion.
All right, in my defense, it's on a page after what I thought was the end of the book. Amanda's obliviousness.
You're not oblivious. You just
that
didn't
makes
read
me
it.
so happy.
There you go. Let's see. My favorite part. I don't know if I have necessarily a favorite part. I do. Okay. So there is a female dragon, and at first she goes by Sky Ma. And then you find out her real name, because if you make a bargain with a dragon using their real name, they're bound to it. So there are rules that go along with knowing a dragon's true name. So she doesn't want to tell any of these humans, because she's very dragonish.
She's the most arrogant of them all. She's the most arrogant.
Compared to Tintaglia.
She's the most arrogant character I've ever read. Yeah, but here's my thing. Tintaglia had a reason to be arrogant.
But that's the thing, is that they're coming into these attitudes. Okay, so we're talking about these dragons as a whole. We know that these cocoons, they didn't develop properly. They came out kind of a little janky. And a lot of it just has to do with, this is not the environment in which they were supposed to, totally reliant on humans. And you would imagine, Amanda and I have talked about this before, something like Centaur, when you're coming in with all of these memories of being able to fly and being worshipped and just living this great life, right? Dragon life. And you come out and of this cocoon having all these expectations, and you can't do any of those things, that would be heartbreaking in a way. And she is, I mean, it's just a way of self-preservation. All of that arrogance. It's a front. It's a big bluff, because she can't do these things. So she puts up this wall that she is better than all of this. And I think that comes out most when they're talking about like trying to fly. So their wings are all stunted, but as they're moving through, they're starting to work their bodies and developing muscles and eating more regularly. They learn to kind of hunt for themselves, and
they're getting more sun.
They're getting more sun later, and so they're growing. And one of the other dragons, who isn't quite intellectually all there, has been working her wings, and
because she lets her keeper help her.
Right. Centaura has a human keeper, Thymera, which is also a really, really interesting character, and we'll talk about her. But Centaura, I think, just feels this lack, and so she's unwilling to do anything with her wings, right? And they're beautiful, and she sees them, and they grow, and she gets challenged by Thymera. You know, you have these wings, you need to be exercising them. Don't be stupid. And this is what makes the relationship between Thymera and Centaura probably the most interesting, because Thymera doesn't act the way that Centaura thinks a keeper should. She acknowledges how beautiful Centaura is, but she looks at it as kind of like this facade. She knows who Centaura is. She knows that Centaura is incredibly selfish, and, you know, just wants to use her as a keeper, doesn't really want to give a whole lot back. And that's it. But I do think that there are reasons for that. Dragons, they're immortal. And even if she's turned into an elderling, that's still kind of like this kind of blink of an eye in time for dragons. So they really don't see any need to invest any kind of emotions in humans. But you can see that starts to break down. And Centaura, I think, does care about
but that's the
Thymera.
thing, is like, it's not going to work, though, because all of the dragons realize that they're still dependent on the humans.
And that's something another dragon before does point out to her. But Centaura doesn't want to accept
that they
this.
take keepers.
And that's just her stubbornness.
And is her stubborn. And she is stubborn.
Character.
And Thymera is just, she's fulfilling her contract. Like, that's the reason she doesn't just, like,
And
stop having
Centaura
anything to
doesn't
do
like
with
that.
Centaura.
She also looks at other keepers, like Sylvie, for example, who's the keeper to Mercor, really does spend time with him and really is working. And Centaura, I don't think, doesn't feel like Thymera
No, she doesn't think
that.
No, she doesn't think that Thymara worships her.
Yeah.
And she does not seem to be as affected by her glamour, like her, and that bothers her. That's what bothers Centaura, is that she doesn't think that she is getting the devotion. Like, that's why she takes that with Elise, because Elise, she's like, at least she has the deference that she should when she talks to a dragon.
But the problem with that, though,
And
is that but Centaura sees Elise form an attachment with another character, as well as with Tarman, which is a live ship, and no longer is really communicating with Centaura, has kind of started another life separate. And Centaura realizes that all of this, she does mention this, that all of that praise is shallow. It doesn't mean anything. Elise has not been flattering her. She stops. And
I was
going to
say,
how
she stops.
Well,
but I think she stops because Centaura never tells her anything. And maybe that's because she can't, or like she can't remember.
I just think
whatever.
these are eye-opening moments for Centaura, where she really
I do think they're growth moments. She's an incredibly arrogant character, but she's interesting.
I think she's super interesting.
She's very interesting to read because she's the most like Tintaglia, which is the only other dragon in this realm that we've had really. Yeah. But she does not. But I was gonna say, it's like you don't have the luxury to be that arrogant. Like, you couldn't feed yourself for the vast majority of this book.
And she gets slapped with that all the time, but she still has that dragon arrogance. But I do think that when we move into the third book, the relationship between Thymera and Centaura is going to be really, really important.
I do too. I'm interested to see where it goes.
Because they talk more about how Elderlings are made. That they are really pieces of art.
They call them, they're works of art for the dragon, and which I think
they're
is
manipulating humans into Elderlings, and they can kind of manipulate those features, those Rain Wild features,
the changes.
But it makes for an interesting character. So this is why I like reading about Centaura. I do like her. I think that she's complicated.
She is complicated.
I like the complicated
ones.
She's
interesting to read.
I do. I like the complicated ones.
There's a difference.
But she flies at the end.
She does. Yay! She does it. Yay!
Because you know why? Because Thymera tells her to quit being so damn dumb.
Yeah, she quit being scared.
But see, that's what makes a relationship so good. And I think it's the most valuable relationship because it isn't based on empty praise like Elise and Centaura. It's that she's going to be straight with Centaura, and Centaura needs that.
Thymera is her own person, which I admire.
Oh, no, there's so much about Thymera. I really liked her. She's complicated. She's very independent. She doesn't want to rely on anyone. That's what I'm talking about, her and Centaura. I'm just saying.
They're so alike. They are. That's really true. They are so alike. And maybe it's a Pride and Prejudice tale. Who's Tintaglia or Centaura is Pride, Thymera is Prejudice? Maybe the other way? I don't know.
We'll see.
No, it's probably the other way. Centaura is prejudiced against everybody.
She's basically prideful. I don't know.
Maybe it's both. Who knows? A debate for another day.
Yes.
Preview to later episode series.
Okay, so
Elise. I like her. I found, here's the of Elise's story and how it was written. The parts that I found the most compelling is the way that, so Elise loves dragons, to be a scholar. And so she, that's how she ends up on this trip, is that she made it part of her marriage bargain, and then she forced her husband, Hest. She forced his hand, and so that's how she ends up on this trip. And she has set up in her mind that she's going to go, and she's going to be this expert, and she's going to be respected in the Rain Wilds, and the dragons are just going to open up their secrets to her because she understands.
This is also when we see her. She has a discussion with Malta, and it was nice to see a character that we saw from Live Ship.
Yeah,
because Malta is the one who kind of throws support behind her being a dragon expert to go along with this expedition to locate.
Yeah,
Kelsingra.
It's the way that she writes the internal dialogue of Elise about how, she thought it was going to be this one thing, and then she realized it's not like that, and she thought the dragons were going to be this one way, and then there's something totally different. And that way that when we build things up in our mind and then it disappoints us, there's a heartbreak in that. And like the way she adjusts and tries to keep trying to pivot and find her place, and she's really struggling because she was very sheltered. But I found that writing the most compelling of her writing, is the way that she wrote that kind of internal heartbreak pivot, expectation meets reality. I really liked that from Elise's character.
And to keep on trucking.
And to keep on trucking.
Well, Cedric, of course, has been Hess' lover for years. Cedric has this grandiose idea that he is going to go and harvest parts of the dragon, the blood, the claws, and all this stuff. Because there is something going on with Chalced. The Duke of Chalced that gets the ruler of Chalced is sick. He's ailing. And so dragon parts are supposed to be restorative in some way. And so we have all these Chalcedonians coming and trying to get on this expedition because these dragons are, you know, a lot of people just assume they're going to die. Actually, the expectation is that all of these weird rain wildlings and the dragons are just going to go off and die and then not be a problem for anybody anymore.
Is punishment.
So Cedric, because he sticks up for Elise.
Because Cedric said, no, that's in your marriage contract and you know it. You need to just do it. He sends him on his way.
Yeah, and so Cedric now is with Elise.
So he's hatched this plan about how he's going to secretly harvest dragon parts.
And then sell them for all of this money. And then he and Hess are going to run off and live this extravagant lifestyle. Because Cedric is not our favorite whatsoever. He's incredibly selfish. I mean, he was exposed to this really hoity-toity lifestyle by Hess. And that's what he wants to do. He wants everything to be nice and clean. He doesn't really want to work. He wants to plan these fabulous trips. He's very pampered.
And this is where
it's just like
this is where we're torn on Cedric in the sense, like, internally. You can understand how he came to be the person he is. He's in an abusive relationship, hiding his identity from society. He's actually the one who suggested her name to Hest, and he continuously manipulates her and throws Hest in her face and throws Beantown standards in her face and is telling her, like, oh, you shouldn't act this way. Oh, you need to do this thing. When he is...
Your reputation
is so important when, like, he's the one...
But
like,
it's all about how it's going to influence Hest.
Right. It's all about how it's going to influence Hest. It's all about how it's going to influence Cedric. Like, he is... in the first book, he's constantly trying to get her to turn back because he just wants to go home. And then he's using her to get closer to the dragon so he can harvest these parts. So... and in the second book, he's actually doing the things that he throws in her face to try to poison her feelings towards Lefren, the captain of the barge. The things that Elise likes about Lefren is that he's very honest and upfront. Like, he's day one.
And he desires her.
Yeah, he's day one.
He's on the Elise
He
bus.
thinks she's beautiful.
He does.
He sees her. He comes leaping up. He leaps over the barge railing and he's like, hi. I mean, you can just see it in your mind. Like, he's immediately like, oh my gosh, this is the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. And he treats her with respect and kindness. He's just incredibly open. He does not try to force anything on her. He's incredibly honorable about her feelings and respecting what she wants. And then, if
there's any fraternization with anybody else, their marriage contract is void.
Anyway, clearly that there's just so much. This is the thing for me. Cedric is just so incredibly dishonest and selfish, and I don't like that in other characters either. That's the thing that I dislike about Centaura, is that she's so incredibly selfish and self-centered, and that bothers me. And from Cedric, it's different. With Centaura, she's that way to everybody. She's a dragon and blah, 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 and, whatever. Cedric he knows that Elise considers him a friend of her childhood. She takes great pains
so
to...
sneaky and manipulative.
And
Centaura
isn't
that way.
That's true. That's why Cedric is, for me, the character that I cannot stand in this series. Because
he pretends to be something he's not.
He picks out what he thinks is the weakest dragon. He steals some of her blood. He actually gets some in his mouth. He puts it in his mouth.
He drinks it.
He drinks it. It's like one of those childlike things where he just he has this compulsion he puts in his mouth, and then it.
I don't know about blood. I never get that one.
Me either. I was like, I don't know what was possessing you. But anyway, so now he has this link to this dragon, and she is also one of those. There's something amiss with her mind. She can't really think straight unless
his mind.
She uses his mind, to sort through her thoughts, and so.
It was an important bond for her overall.
That's true. And she
does forgive him.
She's so instantly loving and forgiving of Cedric. And
it's because...
It kind of annoys me.
It does. But there's a lot of things that happen to Cedric that feel very undeserved. Like good things.
Right. And I hate to be like that because I'm not a vengeful person by nature.
For him to be surrounded with this just unconditional love from this dragon. And I'm just like...
And I'm like... But she tried to kill you. Now, on the other hand, Cedric does save her from Jess. Eventually.
Yeah. But don't give him any credit if you don't give Centaura credit for saving Elise and Thymera. You said just the one thing.
No, okay.
You can't give Cedric credit for the one good thing he did. That's it.
Well, no, but I was going to say.
And then finally fessing up to all of his shenanigans.
Finally. I was going to say, that seems to be the catalyst point for him, is when he makes the decision to stop Jess from killing her.
I guess. Yeah. And to give up on this. And you see all of his self-realizations about Hest and realizing what an abusive relationship that is. And he's able to let that go.
What a terrible person he has become.
Mm-hmm. But it still took Carson to say, did you ever think about Elise? All of this stuff and what this is going to do to Elise? Nope.
Nope, he hadn't thought about that. And then he thinks about it and he goes,
trashing everyone else with no proof.
And then after he admits to Elise about him and Hess, he says, but you shouldn't trust Leftrin because he was going to traffic in these dragon parts, which is untrue. He's using the rumors spread by the person who was trying to kill the dragon, and he throws that in her face. And then again, Carson comes in later and says, you realize that you just I get so upset. He's like, and then again, Carson, the voice of reason, comes in and says, you realize that
Carson's the other hunter.
You threw in her face an accusation that was untrue, that was what you were actually doing. And then he's like,
tried to say
but it's so much, but it was
because
different.
He was going to hide it from her.
Yeah, it was different when I did it because she would never have known about it. And Leftrin would have told her and that would have broke her heart. And Carson's just like,
Silk's way better than Cedric, but he's got a little crush on Cedric, and so there's a little love story there between those two. I don't think it's particularly well developed, but it is.
I will admit, I didn't find it particularly well developed or compelling because really the only thing Cedric seems to have to recommend him when Carson decides is I like him is that
he's crawled enough.
He's handsome, and I'm just like.
And that's it. He really doesn't do anything redeeming.
Yeah, he treats them terribly.
The whole first part of the thing, he stays in his little cabin. He looks down and disdains all of them for
comments
being
about everybody.
He is not pleasant.
He has at the end accepted that his role as her keeper, and he cares for her. It takes him a while, but he does actively. He scrubs her and he grooms her and he's still a keeper role. He knows he's never going back.
Just don't think
he's accepting this new life. I'm still just very frustrated with him.
But are they never going back?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I don't know.
The way it left out. I mean, because they do reach Kelsingra, but there's nothing there. It's a ruin, right? Well, there's lots of stuff there, but they're going to need food. They're going to have to grow food. They're going to have to set that up.
Okay. In the comments, you can tell us what you think about Cedric's redemption.
Undeserved.
On the one, Leftrin is clearly.
We like him. We like Leftrin.
We like him because he is honest. He's honest, and
Leftrin modifies Tarmin, which kind of starts this whole thing with Jess.
That's actually in the first book.
Yeah,
Tarmin gets modified.
You don't know quite how he's modified initially. And then you find out later. It's kind of a cool one. I like it.
I thought it was so interesting.
So they stumble across a cocoon. It wasn't on purpose. They find one that had like the water had washed it away. It wasn't viable.
Tarmin sent him for a walk in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
He talks about that feeling is how Tarmin communicates to him. It's like, I felt a push to go for a walk, and I always regret it when I don't follow those pushes because they're Tarmin. And so he finds it and he brings it back.
And he thinks that he has everything locked down where it's super secret to make these new Wizardwood modifications to Tarmin. And what it does is they build him legs. So because he's a barge to go in shallow water. With webbed feet and then a tail. So he's I kind of feel like an alligator. I don't know. So
it does. That's kind of what it sounds like. It's like a dragon without the wings.
Yeah, or a head. Just the eyes. But I mean, he's still sentient, and he's still. But anyway, it's just so cool. You don't know about that until the second book, like what the actual modification is. They just talk about how easy he is to steer, so you know there's something going on.
And they basically in the second book they fist that it's just a farce. That what Tarmin really wanted was autonomy of movement. He wanted to be able to direct himself.
Yeah, somebody spills in his crew that he had this extra wizard wood. So the Chalcidians, they hear about this rumor and confront him and try and blackmail him into getting dragon parts. So Leftrin is kind of set up through the council. They pull all of these strings to make sure that it's him and his barge.
I think you learned something interesting about the Chalcidians in that too, because the trader that he is working with, the Chalcidian trader who first kind of lets him know he knows, he tells him that he's also being, that basically he's also being blackmailed. That the Chalcid traders, their families are at risk if they don't find these things for the Chalcid ruler, which I thought was very interesting, and maybe that will come back.
Yeah.
Because I thought that was a very interesting revelation, because the way they talk about the Chalcidians with like slavery and from the life ships.
Tawny Man too, like they're talking about like a war with Chalcid. We already know that Bingtown has warred with Chalcid. We knew that in the Tawny Man trilogy. But I really want to. I'm missing my 6 duchies. I want the 6 duchies to come back. I do. I want to see an alliance between all the Bingtown and Rainwilds with my 6 duchies people. I need that. There's not been any 6 duchies connection with these first 2 books, and I'm missing it.
I think that's what's made it hard to not. The books are they're good. They're just not that compelling thread to keep reading to find more.
We're gonna.
We're
we're
so close to the end now.
And the writing is still superb. It's just, and the character development's good. I don't have an emotional.
I don't feel that compelling momentum to keep reading, to keep finding out more that I felt to this series. These fits on. So rating these 2 together. This is just, I'm gonna go generic chicken strips and fries. You go to a restaurant when you're traveling, you recognize chicken tenders on the menu, you get the chicken tenders, you enjoyed it, but it's not necessarily an experience.
Yeah, it might be just because it's Rob and Hobb, then you know you're going to pick up something that you're going to eat.
You're going to eat it. You're going to be full. You're going to be satisfied. You're going to be happy about it. But it's not like...
It's not something that's going to blow your socks off.
It's not the highlight of the trip. Yeah, no. You're not necessarily compelled to repeat it at that restaurant. Like, it's just chicken tenders and fries.
It's just fine.
It's okay.
Yep.
Tell us in the comments what you think. What you thought about this story.
I think they're good. I'm happy that we're reading them, but they aren't, like, if I was going to go back and reread anything from the 16
I probably won't.
This would be at the bottom of the list.
I probably won't
reread
this
again. And I'm hoping that the next 2 books pick up and we'll get more outside of this group. We've been very insulated with these select characters and those experiences, and it's a big group. It was actually really, we have note cards, like in terms of keeping all of the names straight, but I want to see more.
I want to see how it ties to our bigger story.
Yeah, it feels super disconnected, except for the fact that these are the cocoons and there were the serpents, but that's it. There's no real connection, like I said, to the 6 duchies. I want to see more. I want to see an actual war with Chalcid.
I don't know if I want to do a war, but I definitely want a resolution.
But I want it to be with Bingtown, Rainwild, and the Kelsingra, the dragons, and the 6 duchies. Like that's what I want to see them pull in. 6 other books that are not in here. They're just not coming. They're not coming through. The only references have been with Live Ship, and I want more.
Join us next time. We'll be covering the last 2 books, City of Dragons and Blood of Dragons, the last 2 books in the Rainwild Chronicles. If you're enjoying the experience, like and subscribe. Let us know in the comments what you think about this series as a whole, what you think of our summer reading challenge. We are more than halfway there. We're on the downhill slide.
Yeah.
We're doing the thing. And we'll see you next time.
All right.
Bye. My own little dragon cam. Okay.
We need to get into dragon.
I have no control over this cat, and I think we've all accepted that.
It's like wild encounters.
Don't drink her drink.